Our last featured writer tonight is Mary Wagner, who has a kind of an interesting career arc here. She's a former newspaper and magazine journalist, Girl Scout troop leader, truck stop waitress, office temp, judicial clerk, radio talk show host, and criminal prosecutor. Wagner's ongoing legal experience has ranged from handling speeding tickets to arguing and winning several cases before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. She could never stay away from the written word entirely, and inevitably the joy of writing drew her back to the keyboard, fortunately for us. A Chicago native, this mother of four and recent new grandmother now lives in rural Wisconsin, where she draws much inspiration for writing from daily walks in the countryside with her dog Lucky and the cat who thinks he's a dog, the Meatball. She counts both wearing spiked heels and learning to wield a cordless drill and chainsaw, another part of the career arc apparently, among her late blooming discoveries. Mary, please come on up.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and very honored to be standing here when I hear all of the talent this is a room full of it, which it's delightful and it's humbling and a little scary, but I'm glad to be here and thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, the shorter career arc is I started off in newspaper and magazine journalism, went to law school, and then friends talked me into blogging after I'd been a prosecutor for about 5 years. So I still do that, but the blog, Running with Stilettos, developed into, the essays that I was writing there, developed into several books, the latest of which is on the table back there. It's called When the Shoe Fits, and that's kind of a rounded up best of collection of essays. And every word of them is true. If I start writing fiction, I'm going to have to change my name, but everything that is in those books is from my life or some variety of it, my children's lives, my cat's life, whatever. And so there are two takeaways that I would like to give you before I start, and one of which is, if you have friends who believe in you, take their advice and run with it, because I never would have started blogging without the encouragement of my friend and her husband, and I never would have put the essays into books without that encouragement, and they've taken on a life of their own. So let people believe in you. And the other thing is that I never wore shoes like this until I was about 48. So it is never too late to make mid-course corrections. So I'm reading an essay called Mink Recycling, which stems from a mink stole that I ended up getting from my godmother's estate. And that is also one of the essays in the book. I don't know where the mink stole originally came from, or who it had belonged to before it ended up in my godmother's closet. But there were a great many things in Aunt Mary's apartment that I had either walked past over the years while visiting or had never seen at all. And now that she died, it was a little too late to ask. Amber earrings, probably from her trip to Russia. A commemorative glass nearly as old as I was from a Kentucky Derby. My aunt and I both loved horses. I grabbed the glass immediately as we took inventory of the things in her apartment, preparing for the inevitable estate sale that would follow her funeral. There was a full-length fake lynx coat hanging in the fall closet. This I knew the provenance of. I had helped her buy the coat at an upscale shop in Wisconsin on a bitterly cold day 2 decades earlier. I hadn't seen her wear it in years. But what on earth was my never-married, history-teaching maiden aunt doing with a mink stole? As we sorted and vacuumed and displayed and scrubbed and polished in preparation for the sale, the mink came out of the shadows and into the daylight. It was soft and clean and in good condition, but it obviously changed hands several times. The name monogrammed into the lining didn't belong to anyone in my family, so I guessed that my mother or grandmother must have picked it up for a song at someone else's estate sale years before and brought it home just in case. In case of what? Perhaps Prince Charming would come calling with an invitation to the ball, and it paid to be prepared. But I've never lived in an income bracket where the words, "I brought home a mink anything today," would fit into a conversation about shopping, and I can't think of anybody in the family that it applied to either. So, the mink got priced and tagged and attractively staged where it would be noticed by the foot traffic between the dining room and the kitchen during the sale. A lot of things walked out of the house by the end of the day. Many of them were pieces of heavy furniture that we were glad to be rid of. But the mink was still hanging there at the end of business, plush and furry and forlorn, looking completely out of place in a middle-class, second-story apartment in Chicago. Even the fire sale price slashing we did right at the end of the day did not get it to move. And so, the mink stayed on the premises a while longer, far back in a closet, as most of the other remaining clothing was donated to charity, and the knickknacks were farmed out for sale on commission. Hopelessly languishing out of its proper social bracket, the mink managed to combine the appearance of a haughty society matron in humble surroundings with a touchable, comforting feel of lassie. A few months later, when my German cousin and her husband came to Chicago to visit, we had a family gathering of music and reminiscence at my mother's apartment, and somehow the mink stole came out for an impromptu modeling session. Nobody jumped at it even there. And so I finally brought it home with me to Wisconsin, where it took up an entirely new languishing position in the back of my closet. Well, Prince Charming didn't come calling in a carriage with an invite to dinner at the castle, but a friend of mine who actually owns his own set of white tie and tails invited me to a Viennese ball. I had attended the ball for the first time just the year before, with the man in my life on my arm in a rented tux and a pearl tie tack, and we'd enjoyed ourselves enough to make a second appearance a done deal. The weather that first time had been absolutely balmy, but this time the forecast called for snow showers and temperatures in the low 30s. Really, what's a woman in a strapless gown and opera-length gloves who's channeling her inner Habsburg empress to use for a wrap? Well, out came the mink. Now, I am not a real fur person at all. Many years ago, my first dog got her foot caught in a leg-hold trap while we walked in the woods near a river. By the time I freed her leg from that trap, there was blood on both of us. Something like that stays with you. But since then, I've had a knee-jerk reaction to the idea of fur coats and fur stoles and anything that involves killing an animal and displaying its skin simply for status and fashion. Aunt Mary was an animal lover too. I remember that we were both very pleased when we found that fake lynx coat during our shopping adventure. On the other hand, I reasoned, as I worked on my outfit for the ball that year, I was doing a lot more recycling these days in general. More cardboard and paper, more plastic, more metal, more styrofoam. In fact, my recyclables usually outweigh the trash from my house. And you know that rationalization is really big for this woman. And I reasoned the minks that made up this stole probably died at least 60 years ago. It's not like they were part of any viable stream of commerce since the Kennedy administration. So, the mink came with me to the ball. My transportation that evening was a tiny Chevy Aveo with a stick shift, not a carriage pulled by a pair of high-stepping hackneys. My date still wore a rented tux. I recycled the opera gloves from last year and rummaged through my jewelry until I found a pair of rhinestone and fake sapphire earrings that I'd had for a good 15 years and had no idea where they came from. I bought a sequined evening purse at a secondhand shop and found a clearance price dress on a bridal website. Frugality ruled the day. But, oh, that mink stole put such a spring in my step. It was so soft. It was so plush, and wearing it was so much fun. There's an older gentleman with magnificent mutton chop whiskers who attends this ball every year, dressed up in character as the 18th century Austrian Emperor Franz Josef. We have a lot of sport with the fact that in German, my name is Maria Theresa, who was the only female ruler of the Habsburg Empire. The first time we met, he kissed my hand and sang Lily Marlene to me a cappella. I don't know if it was the mink, or the rhinestone tiara, or the architectural underpinning straight from Victoria's Secret, but when we met this year, he said with a twinkle in his eye that I reminded him more of Franz Joseph's mistress than the stodgy Austrian empress. It was quite a night. The mink has moved from the back of my closet to a spot closer to the middle, where I can see it and even take it out and pet it more often, like Lassie. In a middle-class life that mostly revolves around getting to work, weeding the garden, shopping for groceries, and changing the cat's litter box, the mink is never going to get a daily workout. But the next Viennese ball is just a few months away. And I know that along with the gloves and the rhinestones and the sequins and the chandelier earrings the mink stole from Aunt Mary's closet, and I will have at least one more chance to shine.